And we'll stop recording.
These little twisty thingies are broke. Magic. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So luckily I don't have a lot of small print on my slides. I don't think you'd be able to see that in the back. I don't know if you can see the large print in the back. So if you want a copy of the deck, just let me know. There's kind of a lot of memes and stuff in there, so it's not really that educational. But it's going to be fun, and that's the whole point, right? How's the volume in the back? Good? Bad? Right? Awesome. So if I start to kind of get quieter, trail off, just make some kind of rude gesture or something, and I'll do my best to speak up. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm an Ohio native. Usually this is where I would insert the Go Bucks. We're going to talk about that later. So I've been in and out of Ohio, in and out of the DC area. SecureCon as a company does a lot of work in Central Ohio, so I'm here quite often, almost more than not, as also many other hotels. So I've been in security for a while, done a lot of defense work, some on the financial side. SecureCon as a company does a lot of SCADA, so my work wardrobe is varied. I got a lot of fire-resistant things and boots and office-appropriate attire. So the cool part about that is I get in and out of a lot of different places, and I get to see a lot of different perspectives on security. So kind of how I wanted to tie it all in together here. So what I wanted to talk about is, hopefully we don't get volatile, is Midwestern nice. So this is a new talk. We're all going to experience it together for the first time, because these slides just got finished about an hour ago. So let's talk about Midwestern nice. So we do some stuff in the Midwest outside of Ohio, and I started to kind of notice a trend as we began to work with more and more clients that were in the Midwest area. So Midwestern nice, what does that mean exactly? So there's a lot of comparison to Midwestern nice and like Minnesota and the Dakotas. And there are a lot of articles out there about Minnesota nice. A lot of that still applies across the Midwest, so it's kind of interesting. So having been raised about 70 miles east of here, where the cornfields and the cow pastures are, I can definitely relate to a lot of these same ideas here. Not all of that aligns to a religion, and I know we're going to speak generally today, because I don't have enough time to break it all down individually. So Midwestern nice, by theory, is supposed to be from our Scandinavian ancestors for the early settlement here. And it's really kind of just being a courteous, kind of mild-mannered kind of thing. I'm going to give you some examples, because it's hard to describe what it is, but it's also easier to describe what it's not. So we'll go through some of that. We have a couple of folks that work remote at SecureCon who are also Ohio natives. So a lot of the examples I'll give are things that, conversations that I have with them. And it's interesting, once you start to listen for some of these traits, let's call them, you start to pick them up very quickly. So generally, Midwestern folks, they try to avoid conflict and awkwardness. To a point, everybody does, but when you get in like the Northeast, we do quite a bit of work in the New York City area. Not quite the same. They're going to call you out if you say something that you're not supposed to. Here, not so much. We don't really do that. We just kind of try to smooth it over and keep going. The elephant in the room. We're always big on the elephant in the room and avoiding that. I don't know about you guys, but I walked out of so many meetings and said, was I the only person that understood what the problem was there? Why doesn't anybody want to talk about this? Why did we have a meeting to address the problem that nobody will talk about? And some of that can be traced back to Midwestern nice. We try not to do that. It's sort of a duty to the greater good, let's call it. And that duty kind of creates a need to repress a lot of stuff. So there are things that you just don't do and things that you just don't talk about in polite conversations. So it's kind of ingrained pretty early in us. So I don't know about the rest of you, but my Midwestern mother, we had to learn to translate meaning versus saying pretty early on. So, an example is, well, I'm going to go out tonight. It's Sunday night or whatever. Now, somebody more Northeastern Midwestern or Northeastern mother would say something along the lines of, you really shouldn't be doing that. You have things to do tomorrow and you need to get up early. So you should stay in tonight. But more of the Midwestern mother, you get, oh, and the look, right? So you're supposed to somehow figure out what that look is supposed to mean. So from a very young age, we're kind of taught to translate this weird, unspoken kind of language. We grow up kind of encapsulated in it. So you don't really notice it until you start to interact with folks who don't have that same mentality. I catch myself doing it all the time, even today. So in other words, when we repress lots of feelings and we don't say things that should be said and we try to be nice, it pretty much just makes a nice recipe for passive aggressiveness. So what's interesting about this is we don't really, as a group, say things that we shouldn't whenever it's face-to-face. But it's completely different if you have a different kind of vehicle to deliver that feedback. Great example. So my boss, Harry, and I do a joint presentation at a conference called Secure 360 in Minneapolis. All the Minnesota nice, right? Everybody's really nice, and they'll come up afterwards, and oh, thanks for coming out, and I learned so much, blah, blah, blah. But they have written feedback forms that the conference asks them to fill out for each talk. So a couple of weeks after the conference, they'll compile all that feedback and our rankings and how well we did and what we didn't do well. And then they'll, for my amusement, I'm sure that there's probably a better reason, but it's for my amusement, they'll also include the comments. So it's really interesting to see the difference between everybody's very happy at the end of the presentation and then all of the nasty, rude comments about how I don't know what I'm talking about come afterwards when they don't have to tell me to my face. So I have lots of great examples of how Minnesota can be very not nice, just so you know. I've also noticed that this aggression kind of creeps out in certain environments, like driving. Right? So, worked in Columbus for a long time, and I think I was having a transmission replaced on a vehicle or something at some point, and I had to get a rental car. And the Enterprise guy, I should have known something was up, but I don't know, I was distracted. But he's like, you know what, I'm going to give you an upgrade, I got this cool pickup truck, it's going to be really comfortable, it's going to ride really nice like your SUV. I'm like, yeah, okay, man, that's cool. It had Michigan plates on it. I took it back after a day. Like, really? No, I can't do this. So, for those of you who are visiting us from outside of Ohio and may not be familiar, Michigan and Ohio State University, the whole football thing, so we don't wear yellow and blue around here. I almost wanted to wear a Michigan shirt in the airport yesterday just to see how many people would cut in front of me in line, but I didn't have one. So that's still ingrained. I didn't have anything that was blue and gold. But we tend to take that aggression out on ways that we don't necessarily have to own it so directly. So it's interesting when you start to mix that with security, right? So what that does is it gives us this really interesting Midwestern dialect, for lack of a better term. I don't really know how else to describe it. So there's a whole lot of implied meaning, which means there's a whole lot of room for misunderstanding. We do a lot of asking without asking, and I still catch myself doing it. Folks that aren't really from this area, a lot of times will completely miss whatever it is that I'm trying to ask. And then I'm confused. I'm like, was that not obvious? Did I not say that? I'd asked somebody to do something for me the other day. I said, hey, I'm going to be out. Can you take care of this for me? I said, oh yeah, no problem. And I'm waiting for the email to come that I asked them to do, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. Could you do it now? They were like, well, you didn't say that. Okay. All right, fine. So, over the years, I've tried to get better at saying or asking for exactly what it is that I need. So, some of my more Ohio coworkers that work remote, we catch each other using those kinds of phrases all the time. So, in some of the articles that I've got in the reference section here, it talks a whole lot about how to translate that. So, one of the more popular ones is on the phone. So when I'm finished talking on the phone, it's like, well, I better let you go. So in Ohio, that means, all right, I'm done, but I don't really want to say that I'm done. I'm trying to be polite about it. People outside of the Midwest interpret that as, oh, they sound so sad. They must want to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking because I feel bad. So whenever we're on the phone, I hear, well, I better let you go. I'm like, whatever, man, just hang up. like, it's fine, seriously. We work together. It's cool, I get it. So once you start to listen for those little pieces of implied meaning, you'll start to pick them up more. I'm still not as good at being direct as I should be, even after all these years. And I know that I'm doing it, but I haven't quite broken that pattern yet. So one of the other things that comes in with Midwest nights is we don't like awkward silence, right? So there's almost this need to really fill all of the conversations with something else in between. So this has a whole lot of small talk that's built into it. Great examples, as I've been hanging out at the vendor booth up there. Oh, by the way, please stop by the SecureCon booth up there and take a lot of free stuff because I don't want to pack it all back up. Right? So I don't sell things by computer. So I'm not trying to sell you anything for real. Just please come take some free stuff. It really helped me out. But it's funny to kind of watch folks walk by because they kind of want a shirt, but they kind of don't want to look at me. It's kind of like the mall kiosk. Where you try really hard, you just keep walking and try not to meet their eyes, but you need to look over there, but you don't want to lock eyes with the mall kiosk person, because then you feel like you gotta say something. Even though you don't want the, whatever bamboo lucky plant or whatever it is that they're selling, now you feel the need to do something about, at least acknowledge it, right? So, and then we have to fill that awkward silence with more things. So because I don't want to be rude, I might stand there and listen to this person talk about lucky bamboo for a while and hope that somebody calls me and kind of look around for my escape route. So we also have a problem of not really saying what we mean in general. So as I was doing some research for this, I came across some really cool articles. I was going to come up with my own Midwesternisms, but these ones were so great that I decided to just reference them instead because I don't think I can top them. So we say one thing, but we really mean another. So when somebody's pitching a new idea to me, it's like, oh, well, I see that you might be right about that. But what I really think is, yeah, no way. But I'm not going to say that because that's rude. Same thing when somebody suggests that I read something that I really don't want to. Like, please go read this blog about doing, midnight hot yoga. Yeah, okay. I'll check that out. Thanks. Yeah, no way. Not happening. No, it's just not happening. I just can't tell you that you're crazy because I'm trying to be nice. This one's one of my favorites. This is the awkward, I don't know how to end this conversation. So, yeah, I got a thing. Okay, gotta go? I'll see you around. Yeah, that's it. So it's kind of fun to play with these because as you start to listen for them, you'll notice them more. And then you can really start to have fun with it because you know the expected response. So when we know the expected response, it's fun to kind of experiment with ways to get an unexpected response. Oh, I forgot to add my cool effects on this one. It was a late night. Right, so when somebody's working on a presentation or they pitch an idea, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty close to, I know what you mean. Yeah, just give it up, man. I don't know what to tell you. This one is my favorite. Although I've never heard anybody who does artisanal ice cubes for dogs, but I'm sure that would be really interesting. Note the word interesting, right? That's really interesting. Think about how many times you use that word during the day at work. But what that really means... no. But I'm too nice to say that, so I'm just, that sounds really interesting. So, and then it goes back to that loop, right? I got a meeting. I'll catch up to you later. It was good to see you, and all that. Right? Exactly. So it kind of works like that. Because there is no such thing as comfortable silence in the Midwest. Like, there just isn't. Standing in lines, a little chit-chat. The gas pump. Like, I can't even pump gas without having to do this weird conversation dance most of the time. If somebody's at the pump across from me and you're doing that thing where you're trying to watch the pump, but you're trying not to look at the person, but they're looking at you, and now it's like the kiosk situation. I'm like, crap. Now I gotta say something because I don't want to be rude. Same thing. So when we look at social engineering and we are trying to persuade somebody to do something that we need them to do, the whole key to that is to really understand your target environment, right? So if I'm going to do a social engineering engagement in the Midwest, I'm going to look at things a little bit differently than what I would if we were going to the South or if we were going to New York City. The way of life is different. The way that they communicate is different. And if you're going to try to fit in, you need to really understand how that works. And because social engineering basically uses our makeup as humans against us, right, because everybody wants to be nice, right, we're back to that again. You're going to be tired of hearing that word by the time we're done. It really works against us in a way that we don't really understand it. Like we don't catch it until it's too late. And I find that that's usually the case when it comes to social engineering in the Midwestern areas. So we do this by building rapport, right? And some people call it rapport by design, and sometimes it's called rapid rapport. It's basically where we can exchange, some small talk or a few ideas and really kind of get in sync with that person. So there are a couple easy ways to do that. So for those of you who are here from out of state, I'm going to give you a couple of shortcuts to how to start a conversation with anybody in Ohio. Ready? All right, you don't even have to know anything about these subjects. So we're at the gas pump, we're in line, we're in the smoking area where I'm trying to get into this building, and I'm trying not to choke on the smoke. So how about that weather? Because the weather is just crazy, right? So it doesn't matter what the weather is like today. They're like, man, how about that weather today? And then it'll launch that other person into this rant on, I know, yesterday it was 70 degrees, and now I need gloves, and tomorrow I need the air conditioner. And it's just
and there's
how it is.
Falls out of the sky.
Yes. So I can always start a conversation with anybody in Ohio about the weather. Very easy to do. Personally, I don't really sports ball. That's not my thing. But I still understand the basics of it, right? So all I gotta do is be like, yeah, what do you think of the team this year? I don't have to know anything about the team because probably whoever I'm talking to does. So I just gotta let them do the talking and then do some nodding. It's just not like what it used to be. And then they'll launch into a conversation about, how it was when so-and-so was coach and this person was quarterback and, and they're finishing their cigarette, and as they're going through their rant, they open the door for me and hold it so that I can walk inside. It's all about, a little bit of diversion there. And if both of those don't work, construction, right? The state is forever under road construction. So all you gotta say is, I don't think this road work is ever going to be done. Like, you don't have to be familiar with, the whole 670 split or any of that stuff. Like, all you gotta say is, how about that commute this morning? I don't think this road work is ever going to be done. Because no matter where they're commuting from, they went through some kind of construction zone. Guarantee it. It's just the way the state is. It's how it works. Right? So, for our out-of-state transplants, it's because the weather is so bad. It causes a lot of damage to the roads. I could go into a long talk about how concrete and blacktop work and all of that, but I will spare you. Because I don't need to fill that awkward silence. I have other slides to do that. So what that really boils down to, and I had to direct quote this because I just thought it was fantastic from an article that I had picked up on Midwestern Nice. We don't really want to embarrass somebody by speaking up even when they're doing something wrong, because that would embarrass them, and that would make an awkward situation, and that would create conflict. If we don't really like that, generally speaking. So it's so much easier for them to watch somebody hold the door for somebody to let them into the building and not say anything than to say, hey, where's your badge? Right? Because we're just not programmed that way. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how to try to combat that a little bit when you're building a security program, because all of those behaviors are contradictory to what we teach people in information and physical security. So how do you teach people to call somebody out when you're basically raised not to? It's going to take some time. Cool example of this. A handful of years ago, we were doing a physical penetration test on a SCADA client, and they run a large portion of the smart grid. This is not a smart grid talk. We're not going to debate how smart the grid is or how not smart the grid is. That's a whole other story. Basically, they had a control center that was 4 stories underground that we were supposed to infiltrate as part of this test. So their physical security guy was so confident that we weren't going to get in. He basically told me the first time, "You're not getting in." Which I don't know why they do that. Because I don't care how many hours it takes now. I'm getting into wherever it is I'm supposed to be getting into. And in their defense, they had a lot of really great defenses in place. Like, they did a lot of things right. The badging system had some issues. I'll give them that. And we were able to exploit some of those issues, but not quite enough to get all the way into the control center. Since then, I've learned how to get around that control. Basically, they were using a combination of a proximity card and a biometric at the door for the control center. So at the time, I was really good with proximity card cloning, but not so much with dealing with the biometric piece. I've addressed that since then, without the use of gummy bears, because I've got a little bit further than just smashing the gummy bear on the reader and hoping that it works, because some of the vendors actually picked up on that and it doesn't work that much anymore. So with our clone badge, I basically just put on a nice pretty jacket with their corporate logo on it that I had made because I couldn't find one at the Goodwill nearby. Had my clone badge that's going to get me most of the way in, but not all the way. Bless you. But I needed some kind of diversion, right? So I cannot tell you the number of places that I have walked into with a clipboard. It makes me look official, and it makes me look like I'm doing the things and stuff, right? So my plan was, the hallway for the door to get into this control center was... it's literally just 2 doors that go into this little hallway, an elevator because of their safety requirements, and then the stairwell. So my plan was, I can't get around this biometric reader, I can't open the door from the outside using some of the other tricks that we use. I'm just going to wait for somebody to come out, I'm just going to grab it really quick before it closes. It sounded like a really good plan to me, because I was out of ideas at that point. I had a clipboard, but I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. It didn't really matter at the time. So a younger guy comes out. He wasn't an intern, but he had just started working there. So I felt a little bit bad about that later. I taught him a life lesson, right? He'll never do it again. And he was a nice guy, right? So as he came out, I was going to grab the door, but they thought about that, and they made it so that the door basically slams behind the person, right? So there's no way to just kind of grab that handle without drawing the attention of somebody and missing and then making a bigger problem for yourself. So as he comes out, he notices that I'm standing there with my stuff. But he doesn't really say anything. He just kind of looks at me. So I asked him, I said, well, I'm here from the audit department. I have to do physical inventory. I've got to do printer inventory. I'm new, the new guy always gets stuck with equipment inventory. I said, there are 3 printers that I have on the list for down there. I need to get somebody to escort me down there so that I can check the serial numbers and make sure that the inventory is complete. I said, do you know anybody that can take me down there? He said, well, I can take you down there, which is really what I asked, but I just didn't ask it that way. He said, I can take you down there, but we got to sign in first. Okay, this is going to be interesting. So he walks me outside of the little area over to the guard building. I'm still wearing my fake badge and all my swag, and he walks in, hands me the clipboard to sign in. Security guard doesn't look up from the solitaire on his phone. He's like, yeah, okay, she's with you, whatever. Sounds good. And they don't issue you like a temp, like extra badge or, like a red lanyard or anything to call out that, if this is a visitor, they don't belong there. The control center has certain requirements that they're supposed to follow for that, just like folks who work in defense. Whenever you take an uncleared person into a classified area, there's all kinds of stuff that you're supposed to do. Same case here, but they didn't really do any of those. So he walks me over back in, does his proximity card and the biometric scan. We go down the 4 flights of stairs, and then you got to do it again at the bottom door, which I thought was kind of cool. I'm like, all right, that's cool. So I had to get past it twice. That's fine. So we get inside, and then he walks away. I kind of look around for a second. I'm like, well, now what? He went to go try to find the other printer that I was looking for. So not only is he helping me, he's wandered off and left me by myself in this controlled area that I don't belong in. With my phone, which you're not supposed to have down there. So of course I'm taking pictures with it, right? Because I got to be able to prove it somehow. So I had to make sure that my arm and the clipboard were in the pictures because I didn't want them thinking that I stole this picture from their website. Although I did steal this picture from their website. The one in their report looks a lot different. It's very, very action shot-like, sort of head camera kind of thing. But that just goes to show, he was just trying to be a nice guy. He was trying to help out. He didn't want to tell me, no, I can't do that, or hold on, I've got to check with my boss, or I need to verify, this, that, and the other. He was just trying to be nice. And that's great, except for he really shouldn't have been nice to me. But I bet he'll never do it again. I bet if I went back, he'd still remember me, so I haven't gone back there. I send the other engineers for that now, because, we're known there so much that they basically have our photos up, so they follow us wherever we go and we're on campus. So I only do a guest appearance if they need like a big distraction. All right, if you really need a distraction, I'll show up and, walk around the campus or something. It doesn't matter what I do as long as I lead them away from the area that those guys are trying to get into. So I think that one's coming up in a couple of months. It's going to be really interesting to see how it goes again this next time because we figured out how to defeat the biometric reader that they have. So I know that they've put a man trap in, but again, it uses the same compromised card system. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one all folds out. So how do we combat this when it comes to social engineering and defending our environments? How do we deprogram that niceness that's been sort of programmed in from the beginning? It's going to take time, right? So I have a whole other presentation. It's called Social Engineering Your Own. You can find it online. There are a lot of extra tips that I'm not going to go over in this presentation in there that'll be really useful for it. Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I co-authored a book on creating an awareness program, because nobody wants to talk about an awareness program. So that's what I talk about. In this instance, we've noticed over all of the tests that we've done, physical, social engineering, or the blended, the red team, we've really noticed a couple of things. And most of that is there aren't really good procedures for entry and exit into a lot of these areas, especially if you're in like a multi-tenant building, where so-and-so's on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors, and we're on the 1st and 6th or whatever. Nobody's really clear on what they're supposed to and not supposed to do. And a lot of these environments, people have badges, but they don't wear them. So whenever they come up to the door and they hold it for somebody, how are you supposed to know that that person works here or not? Once you get into a larger organization where everybody doesn't know each other, how are you supposed to know that that person is authorized to be in there? The flip side of that is sometimes we come into environments where they have very defined procedures like that, and they're close, right? So you can tell that they're starting to work with the awareness program, but it's not quite there yet. So sometimes we'll get challenged. And one of our coworkers, a very large, kind of scary-looking guy, we like to send him on these just because it's kind of amusing to see if this large, scary-looking guy, who obviously sticks out in an office environment, can get himself into an area and stay there. So basically, it was a multi-tenant building, just like I had discussed, and he walked in behind somebody and took over an office. That person was out on vacation, so he just went and sat and made that his office for the week. So about the 3rd day, somebody got, they were ready, right? They were ready for that conflict. They didn't like it, but they were going to do it because they knew that's what they were supposed to do. So they come up to him, they're like, "Hey, where's your badge?" Being the big guy that he is, he's like, "I got mine, where's your badge?" Whoa, they weren't prepared for that. Right? That wasn't covered in the training. At that point, the person's supposed to be afraid and run away. They're not supposed to say something back. So because the guy was he just wasn't ready for that response, he just completely locked up. He's like, "Well, I work here." It's like, "Who are you here to see?" It's like, "Oh, well, I work with Steve. He said that I didn't need a badge, so you can go talk to him if you have questions." Just shut him down, turned around and just went back to the office. And waited for security to come and get him, but security never came. Right? Because at that point he didn't know what to do. So a lot of these environments, you'll see that they have some kind of policy. It might be loose, but it's some kind of policy on physical entry into the space. But they don't tell you what to do when you find somebody in that space that doesn't belong. What do you do? I don't know. Especially if they don't have on-site security personnel, what are they supposed to do? So those are the kind of holes that we see across the board. It doesn't really seem to matter if it's a large or a smaller organization. A lot of times they're not prepared for the unexpected because you don't know what you don't know. So we've recommended a lot of times just looking at those policies and trying to think devil's advocate on, all right, so step A, if step A doesn't work, we go to step B. How do you escalate that? Well, what do you do if you see a suspicious person in the building? I don't know. What are you supposed to do? Well, I don't know. We didn't document it. And then it circles back around. And because we want to avoid that conflict, we don't really want to create a hostile work environment. Most of the time, they just, well, that's not really what we want to do here. And they move along. I'm like, okay, you just spent a lot of money on a physical test for us to come in and evaluate this for you. These are the holes. These holes will still be there unless you address them the next time. So sometimes they're addressed, most often they're not. And that's because it requires so much more than just, we'll just change that setting, or we'll just set this card reader up on that door. Because it requires so much cultural change, they don't know how to deal with that, they don't have resources to figure that out, that they just drop it, because they don't know what to do. So I've been working on some resources for that, inside and outside of the book. I've got quite a bit of reference links. Not all of them are in this presentation, but if there are other reference links that you need for your program, just let me know. And the basic stuff, right? So to us in InfoSec, this is all really obvious stuff, right? What happens if you get a suspicious email? What happens if you get a suspicious message? And some of that's fairly well documented in places that we go in and out of. We did a red team middle of last year on I gotta figure out how I can talk about this. On a federal client, put it that way. And they had lots of really great defenses in place against phishing and whatnot at the SMTP server, right? So they had great email defenses. So what do you do when you need to phish and they have a lot of good defenses and I don't want to deal with all those? You phish without email, right? So you just go around it. So LinkedIn is a favorite of mine. If you've seen any of my talks, you'll know how much I love LinkedIn. It's the phone book for social engineers. It really is. If I want to know who's on the network team for that company over there, I just look on LinkedIn because they're probably on there with their whole resume that tells me all about their career and what they do there and what kind of technologies that they use. And it's great because I don't even have to fingerprint at that point. I don't have to scan anything because they've already told me what they have. We also use it on the flip side, not just for intel gathering that way, but we'll also use it to build that rapport that I mentioned earlier. So, giving away some of the family secrets here. So there's a really good way to do this, and it's all about the profile picture, okay? So it's got to be like a really nice looking girl who's right about college graduate age, right? It can't be too obvious. It can't be like a Girls Gone Wild kind of thing, you know, we're not that kind, right? Because those are easily picked up. But it needs to be something that's like a candid photo that looks, you know, kind of cute, looks unimposing. It works pretty well in larger organizations where everybody doesn't know each other. And we basically make them our candidate, bless you, and we create them a little resume and we put in some work history for that organization. Maybe we list what college they went to, especially if I notice like that there are a lot of graduates from a certain school working at that company. I'll go ahead and add a degree from that school in there as well, right? Because we want rapport, we want things that are in common. And I'll just fill out, not really detailed on the resume, just high enough level to kind of give them an idea of who this person is and what they do. In this case, her name was Anna. And Anna got really popular. So we actually exceeded the amount of transactions that you can do in a free LinkedIn account. I didn't even know that there was a limit, but there is. So we had to upgrade, right? Because Anna was really friendly at first. Because it just looks like, you know, a young, ambitious, recent graduate who wants to work their way up in the organization. Fantastic. So as Anna started to make new connections, the other connections started to find her, and it got to the point where I wasn't sending out, you know, 50, 60 LinkedIn invites a day. After we got in a couple of weeks, I didn't have to send any more invites because they would come to me. They would see, you know, popped up as a suggested thing, and, oh, this girl's so cute. Yeah, let's help her out. And it got to the point where she had more connections than all of us in the company together. I was like, uh-oh, okay. LinkedIn did sort of catch on to it. They were like, whoa, there are way too many connections for this, or way too many transactions. They disabled the account because they thought it was a bot. So, Anna emailed them a really nice email that said, you know, I don't understand. I know you sent me these rules of the road. I didn't violate any of these. You know, can you please tell me what I did wrong so that I can get my account re-enabled? They have great customer service, by the way. So the next day they came back and said, oh, you know, we're so sorry. That was our mistake. We disabled it. We turned it back on. Here, go ahead. Like, whew, okay, good. Because I put a lot of time into that account. A lot of time. Side note, they actually disabled my real LinkedIn account because I forgot to clear some of the browser cookies. So if you're going to do it, be smart about it and use different browsers. We can talk about that later. Get me after, we'll talk about that some more. So anyway, you know, it got to the point where I didn't really have to do any searching at all with Anna because everybody was just coming to link in with her because she was popular and she had a really cute picture and everybody wanted to help her out. She got the creepiest messages. Wow. It was, you know, hey, where do you sit? I want to meet you. What are you doing for lunch today? Some of them I replied to, like, you know, as vague as possible. Because, again, we're building rapport, right? So you want to build some kind of at least basic relationship here, but not too much. So, you know how LinkedIn announces, like, the work anniversaries and things like that. So Anna would be sure to congratulate people on their work anniversaries with this particular agency. And sometimes they would reply back, "Oh, thanks. Hey, I don't think I know you. Where do you work?" And then the dialogue would start that way. So for quite a while, I did nothing but chat on LinkedIn all day at work and get paid to do it, which was really cool. So while we're doing all of that part, we're still doing all the technical piece on the side and building up the attacks that we wanted to use, making the payloads and figuring out how we're going to deal with the payloads and their endpoint protection. We know what endpoint protection they're using from a couple of different sources. LinkedIn was one of them, but not the only. So when the time came, we did a couple of different attacks too. We did some document-based attacks, right? A little Empire framework in there. If you haven't used it, it's highly recommended. You can actually attach documents in the LinkedIn Messenger. That's kind of cool. They do some sort of virus scan, but it's not very good. But what we decided to do for Anna, instead of dealing with trying to get around the security settings in LinkedIn, because again, we don't want to attract the attention of the LinkedIn staff, we made her own website, right? So she had her own domain, she had an SSL certificate, right? Because we got to be safe. And it was, just a WordPress site. It wasn't anything special at all, but it had some nice Adobe stock photo in there, and it had her same picture, right? Because the picture is important. It had her same photo from her LinkedIn profile, so that you see that bright, shining, innocent face to download her resume. So we had made it so she had a work anniversary, right before we were ready to do our attack. So she had her 1-year anniversary of the agency right as we were ready to do that attack. So when she would get congratulations from people, "Oh, congrats on your 1-year anniversary, blah, blah, blah," then we would reply back, "Oh, hey, thanks so much. I'm really looking to grow within the agency. I was wondering if you could take a look at my resume and let me know what you think." Link. Right? So you're already around, you're phishing without email. You don't have to worry about email. You don't have to worry about LinkedIn security. It's encrypted, because safety first. So that's how we went about that, right? So we did a couple of different variations of that basic thing. But we used the rapport that we built with Anna, in order to deliver all of those messages. And because, that's a pseudo-trusted sender to these folks, they don't know that Anna's not real, they went ahead and they would click it. They would open the documents, they would look at the website, they would run the Java upload, which was signed, by the way. But that didn't matter, right? They'd already been conditioned to just click the run button, and we'd check that box for them to automatically trust this and run every time, because it's trusted, so why not? So it worked really well from the attack perspective. So what was the problem with that? So back to those procedures and the policies. How do you have a policy for don't talk to strangers on the internet? Really, what are you going to do? They're not using work email. Yes, they're using LinkedIn at work, but they can't block LinkedIn because of the political craziness that would happen when, the CIO can't be on LinkedIn all day, because that's a professional tool. So you got lots of problems here, right? And if you're not good with your outbound proxy, if you're not really on it, you're not stopping those links when they click on the messages. So it was actually kind of impressive what they did. Somebody reported it because they looked and they saw, oh wait, this name, even though it was a pretty common name, wasn't in the employee directory. They're like, wait a minute, this person doesn't exist in the agency. So even though they didn't really have a policy for that, somebody spoke up. I don't know who they reported it to. I didn't get the details of that part. But somebody said something. Someone in security. And then they started to investigate it. So when it came to the outbreak, it was interesting because they had identified it as a threat. And they had sent notifications out to folks, hey, this person isn't real. Don't talk to them. It didn't work, but they did try, right? So when it came to the outbrief, I just popped up that picture. I didn't put anything else in that slide, just her photo. They're like, oh, thank God, that's you. We thought that was China. Okay, I'll take that compliment. Right, but they wouldn't even have known about that attack vector had somebody just not said, hey, you know what, this doesn't look right. And really that's what we need to try to instill in our workforce. Is, hey, you know what, it's okay to say something's not right here. That's not an easy thing to do. Right, especially with, when your user base does stuff like this. They all do. Don't tell me your users don't. I know better, I've been there. Probably LinkedIn with them on some account. I don't know what one. But here's the deal, right? We need to figure out how to drive corporate, culture change at that point. Here's where most awareness programs fail. And that's really where we try to teach them to be security people like us. You know what? They're accountants. They're secretaries. They are not technology people. That's your job. Their job is to just know who to pick up the phone to call, who to hit forward on that email to, and say, hey, I saw this. I don't think it's right because of whatever. That's all that your awareness program should be teaching them to do, is just look for the red flags and then to send it to somebody who can help decipher it. Right? They're not going to dump email headers and try to figure out if this email was bounced through this service. Like that's not what they do. Like they've got payroll to deal with, right? So I'd rather them deal with payroll while I investigate this weirdness. And really, wrapping it in disguise, training in disguise is kind of a cool thing. Back to that whole social engineering your own presentation, I got a whole thing about how to do that. They're your first line of defense, right? So they wouldn't have known about Anna if somebody hadn't have just said something, and then be taken seriously on the flip side, right? So there's my little life lesson. Right? So we got to be patient as security people because they're not security people. They don't know. I got to put this in here. I'm almost out of time. But my husband used to work incident response at Patel a handful of years ago. And he was working with one of the groups that had something kind of suspicious happen. And he told the secretary, he said, hey, if you see anything else that's weird, just give me a call and we'll figure it out. So she calls him the next day, like all panicked. She's like, I think there's something wrong. I really need you to come up here. It's like, okay. So he goes up, and she's there, her hands are all in a tizzy. And she's like, I searched something in Google, and then I looked at the bottom, and there were all these extra O's in Google. And I know they don't belong there. Okay. But his reaction there was really important, right? So had he did the, wow, that was really stupid, don't call me with this, don't waste my time kind of reaction, do you think she ever would have reported something suspicious again? No way. I wouldn't do that. If you're going to yell at me, I'm not going to do that at all. So, he took a breath, laughed inwardly, and said, okay, this is the way this is supposed to work, it's okay. Here's some of the other things that you might want to look for. And just like a quick 30 seconds, just high-level view in her inbox of, here are some weird things. If you see these things, call me. If you see other things that look weird, we'll figure it out together. Took 5 minutes of his day. So we have to reinforce that behavior, even though it still needs some tuning. So rest assured, Google is safe, even though it has extra O's. And a couple of ways to do this, you got to wrap it in a couple of different delivery methods because not everybody learns the same way. Most folks don't learn visually just by reading things. Well, I sent an email. They should know not to click on that. Most folks don't learn that way. So you've kind of got to tie in different ways of doing that. We've had a lot of success inside and outside of the federal agencies with doing some guest information sessions. And you got to disguise it, right? So it's more of, like identity theft prevention tips. We're really teaching them how to not give away personal information online and or company information online. But you've got to make it so that it matters to them, or they're not gonna pay attention and they're not gonna keep that knowledge with them. So keep it up. It's a long road, but it's our road to travel. And that's all I have today. And because I'm in Ohio, and it doesn't matter how bad your talk was, if you end it with "Go Bucks," that's all anybody will remember. So, go Bucks! I just drop me an email or hit me on Twitter if you want a copy of the slides. I've got the references at the back.